raise your hand if you stayed longer in your marriage than you should have because you were worried about how it would affect your kids. This was absolutely me. And I do believe that having two parents who love each other under the same roof is what's best for kids, but obviously it is nuanced. And when we look into the top things that moms worried about when they split up, finance is up there and kids is up there. So we are going to dive into today's episode about how to support your kids through the divorce process. And we're going to focus on high level stuff that gives you the most bang for your buck, because I want you to know, generally speaking, what your kids need to thrive in divorce. And obviously there's way more depth that we can dive into, and that's what we go into in my one-on-one coaching, but let's cover high level. These things actually work. First, I want to start off with the belief that divorce messes up kids. Now, we think that there are tons of examples, and there are actually tons of examples of grown adults who are raised in a divorced environment who will say that they didn't exactly turn out great because of their divorce, or they needed therapy, or their relationships as adult kind of sucks. And so we know that it is possible to quote unquote screw up kids through divorce, although I would argue that that was just their path to go through. But we obviously don't want them to struggle through this. We want to be able to do what we can to make their lives as we want them to thrive. We obviously want them to thrive, and we want to be able to thrive, which is why we don't want to be in this marriage any longer. When we look at this fear of our divorce is going to mess up our kids, I want you to think about this not as a black and white issue. I want you to understand that, yes, there's the example of the loving home with the married couple raising the kid. And there's this contrast of messy divorce, high conflict, but there's so much in between. There are bad marriages and high conflict marriages within the home. There are amicable divorces where the parents get along. Overall, the research actually doesn't show that divorce is what screws up kids. It's actually the level of conflict. So as much as possible within our control, we want to make this divorce, this relationship with our co-parent, as amicable as possible, especially in front of the kids. Now, I understand that that is not entirely within your control. You can do your part, but the other person has to do their part to make it a perfect solution. And since we don't live in the land of perfect, I'm going to show you what you can do when you can't control what's going on in the other home. You can't control how their other parent shows up. All you can control is how you show up and what goes on in your home. You can't even control your kid and what they're feeling, how they're perceiving what you're doing versus their dad versus their mom, or whatever your situation is. You can't control how they're perceiving things. You can't control what they're feeling. All you can do is show up as a steady support system for your child. So in order for your child to thrive, they really need three, actually. Let's start with connection, safety, and a good role model. And the third is arguably the most important. So let's talk about connection for a minute. We are hardwired as people, as individuals, as humans to need connection. So connection also goes hand in hand with safety, because when we feel connected to a person, like a mother or father within a family unit, we feel safe. So connection, what can we do for connection? Something like on transition days, when your child arrives in your care, spend a few minutes with them, connecting with them. Play with them if they are young. If they are older, ask them about their day. Be genuinely curious about their perspective and what they want to share to you. Take the time up front. I know it is so easy in this day and age to rush, to get dinner on the table, to get to extracurriculars, and we're just in the busyness that we forget to actually connect and be present with our kids. And even 3 to 5 minutes can change the entire trajectory of your evening, because it just signals to them, okay, they can be in this space, they can land in this space, their nervous system can relax, they can just, so connection is something that is so important. Another way that you can connect is putting on some music and dancing around and being silly and just spending a few moments together in that form of play. Moving your body de-stresses you, it de-stresses your kids. Connecting and dancing, like I am telling you, that is one of my go-to strategies. If you're having a crap day with your kids, put on some songs, dance around, it shifts the entire mood and entire dynamic. It can really take a bad day and turn it into a great day. Another way to connect with your kids, and this one seems kind of counterintuitive, but is to get them to help with things around the house. So yes, I'm talking chores, things like getting them to help you cook dinner. Yes, it might take longer, but you are spending quality time creating something and talking with them and being with them in the same room, working together. So this does a couple of things. It's not just connection time. It gives them purpose. It gives them a sense of pride. It builds their confidence. All of that are key skills and values and characteristics that we want to instill in our child that makes them more unwavering during the storm. So building that up through connection, through giving them purpose and allowing them to contribute to the family and the day, like that is so helpful. So the second one I mentioned, safety, and connection is going to signal to the brain safety. So when your child is emotional, when they are stressed out, when they are anxious, I want you to think of their brain as if they're in a fight or flight state. That is what's going on. When they're overwhelmed, when they're lashing out, they are in a fight or flight state. And when you think of a fight or flight state, that is fear. It's a fear response. Now, it doesn't have to logically make sense on the surface, but I want you to know that from a brain perspective, that is what's going on. So we want to calm that part of the brain down. We want to calm that fear response down, and we need something to signal safety. So anything that signals or gives them connection, that brings them down, their stress levels down, brings them safety. So things like talking in a calm voice, focusing on connecting with them, hugging with them, soothing them first before correcting any behavior that needs to happen. The goal here is to be an emotionally safe space for our kids. Now, this can be really tricky at times because oftentimes we're overwhelmed and stressed out, and we haven't been brought up in a way to deal with anger. And it's really important for us to understand that emotions are just waves that pass through the body. They need to be felt and they come crashing down. Like it's just an emotion that goes, it crashes up and it lets go. So they are nothing to be feared. And so often we feel like our kids should be angry, they should be sad, oh my God, we need to fix things. And when we try to fix our child, it signals to them that something is wrong with them, they need to be fixed. And if you're trying to fix them, they're not capable of being like fixing it themselves. And it can be, you're actually doing a disservice to your kids if you're trying to rescue them out of their emotions. So we want to be this really safe space for our kids to just let out their emotions and come back to safety. And one of the biggest ways that we can do this, and this brings me to my third point, is doing our own inner work, working on our own triggers, our own fears around like what it means about our child or our parenting if our kid is having a meltdown. So working to be this grounding, stabilizing support system for your child when they are in these high emotional periods. And also what this is doing is it is modeling for them how to be healthy, how to be in a healthy relationship, whether it's a romantic relationship or not. You are showing them how to be in a healthy relationship with them. And that is going to teach them how to do it with others. The last thing I do want to mention, because I forgot to mention it under emotional safety, if you have a really anxious child, a worried child, someone who stresses out very easily, I want you to pay attention to number 3 and how your stress levels are. Are you anxious, or can you just ride the waves and be totally chill? Like, if you are, the more chill you are, the better it's going to influence your kid, or the more it's going to influence your kid. And when they're in an anxious state, I want you to remember there's 3 things that really calm down anxiety. And some of them you are not going to want to hear. They are simple, but they are against cultural norms, let's say. So the first one is no screens. Screens, whether it's an educational show they're watching or game they're playing, it doesn't matter. Screens trigger a fight or flight response and make us more anxious and more depressed. It affects our brain in a really messed up way. So if you have an anxious child, someone who's really worried all the time, Eliminate screens. Try eliminating it for a week or 2 weeks, or just reducing screen time. I would actually recommend going cold turkey just for like a week or two so you can see the contrast and if it makes any difference. But screens are not helping you. Even if it tends to calm them down and relax them, it's actually, from a brain perspective, working against you overall. The second one is to get outside. Getting in nature is one of the quickest ways to de-stress. If you can get yourself or your kid into a forest, that is going to calm your whole nervous system. And along with that is movement. So whether that's walking, dancing, like I mentioned earlier, or doing hard exercises, running around, exerting energy, you cannot be stressed when you are moving your body. Or when you move your body, even walking, it rocks your system in a way that is comforting to your nervous system. So remember, no screens, outside time, movement if you have an anxious child. So I just want to, from a frame of reference perspective, this episode is about talking about how to support your kids through divorce. And it's really about how to support them from an emotional perspective. So they are dealing with change, which can be destabilizing. They are dealing with different rules and different personalities, which they were always dealing with if you guys were even living under the same roof. They just had more of a back and forth between parents to regulate. And they are dealing with their environment completely shifting in a way that they don't really know where it's going. So depending on how old they are, this might affect them differently because they're being shown that, their world as they knew it can completely change. And so it's really, really important that they have one parent, at least one parent, who can be a grounding, stable anchor for them, who understands their emotions and can absorb some of the impact of their emotions, letting them know that it is okay for them to feel, and showing them how to process those emotions in a really healthy way. And you can do that by modeling and being an example. The other thing I do want to mention is we hear a lot about the importance of consistency with kids. And consistency falls under that safety aspect. When things are inconsistent and volatile and uncertain, that is when the nervous system feels unsafe. So don't worry about whether the day-to-day is consistent or the routine is consistent. Here's what I want you to pay attention to and make sure your kid knows. I want you to make sure your child knows what to expect. So it is totally fine that things might shift, plans don't work out. Like, this is life. Life changes. Life is not a single routine day after day. Like, your child needs to be able to handle some level of change. So helping them understand what to expect falls under that safety category. So even if the plans are different or have changed, let them know as soon as you know. Let them know what to expect in their evening or going into the next day. And even if they're struggling, if they're coming home or if they're coming to your home and saying what's going on at their other house, or that they're really struggling with, their dad losing his temper as an example, helping them understand. Now, this is a fine line to walk because we don't want to badmouth their other parent because that makes our child in a very awkward position. But you do want to help them understand what to expect. So even in my home, my kids know that sometimes mommy has a temper tantrum. And what this language does, and you don't have to use the same language, but what it does is it allows them to see my behavior and my reaction as something separate from them. Okay, I might be reacting to something that they've done, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they have done something wrong. So my kids have actually said to me, like, Mommy, are you actually mad at this, what we're doing, or is this reminding you of something in your past? Because we talk about emotions, we talk about triggers. We are very open about, having temper tantrums and needing timeouts and regulation, and we have those conversations. So this all falls under that safety category because Our kids need to know that they might trigger someone else, they might do something to upset them, but ultimately that person is responsible for their own feelings, and it's not a commentary on who they are as a person. So as much as you can model the behavior that you want to see and have an open dialogue about all of the feelings, like this is where the emotional support and stability comes in. So if you hit on connection, safety, and focus on being a good role model, you will be light years ahead in terms of being able to support your kids through divorce. So remember, as you're going through this, I am always cheering you on. And if you need a little bit more than cheers, DM me on Instagram and we can chat about working with me, coaching you one-on-one, and seeing if that's a good fit for you and your situation. And remember, as always, take it one step at a time and you will get to where you want to go. I will see you in the next episode.